Let's have a chat about how things went down in Australia during the pandemic and what Aussies can do to protect themselves from something similar happening in the future. Now I gotta say, there were some twists and turns that left people scratching their heads, feeling a little bit miffed about their freedoms, right? Picture this: the government put the brakes on folks leaving the country. We're talking about leaving Australia for prolonged periods of time. They slammed the door shut and said, "Hold on a tick, no overseas jauns for a while." It was like telling a kangaroo it can't hop around anymore. Now I personally know folks love their overseas adventures, don't you agree? So this move really ruffled some feathers. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just about stopping people from international travel and dining in. It was about trying to keep the virus from hitching a ride back home. You see, COVID was like a pesky dingo, and they wanted to make sure it didn't sneak back in. Now the part that really got folks heated was how some Aussies got stuck overseas. Now imagine being on a working holiday or visiting friends overseas, and suddenly the welcome mat gets pulled out from under you. It ain't fun. Some Aussies found themselves stranded like on a castaway on a deserted island. Yes, there were cases where folks couldn't get back home for ages. Families were split up, and that's never a good feeling. Some people called it a crime against humanity. Let's be real here. Australia has always been super protective of its biosecurity. Those who attempted to import an animal into the former prison island know exactly what I'm talking about here. Governments worldwide were scrambling to deal with this wild virus, and sometimes decisions were made that left people in tough spots. But let's keep it real here. It was frustrating as hell. People were separated from their loved ones, stuck in limbo, and feeling like they were in a real-life episode of Lost. It's true. And yeah, some folks thought that some of these moves went too far in the Freedom Department. On the flip side, you've got to look at it from the government's point of view as well. They were navigating uncharted waters, trying to keep everyone safe from a virus that's been spreading like a bushfire. They thought that restricting travel was a way for the whole nation to avoid going belly up. Australians did face some real challenges with their freedoms during COVID, especially when it came to travel. While some might shout crime against humanity, it's also important to understand the tough decisions that were made to keep everyone safe and sound. What do you think? Post your thoughts in the comments below. It was a bumpy ride, but Australians are a resilient bunch, and we're all hoping for smoother sailing ahead. The best part is that Australians got options to prevent something similar from happening in the not so distant future. Aussies need a backup plan just as much as Yankees do. That's why I wanted to touch on some of the most open countries during the past pandemic, so that you can discover some viable options to capitalize from in the near future. Are you ready for this? Do you know how Eastern European countries kinda did their own dance when it came to those strict COVID restrictions and lockdowns? Well, let's rewind the tape a bit and go back in time to the Soviet Union days. Back then, governments had a habit of saying one thing and doing another, and people got real good at reading between the lines. It's like they had a sixth sense for government bull. Parents and grandparents would sit down to the little ones and whisper, "Look, kiddos, don't take everything those guys in suits say as gospel truth. Trust your gut and question stuff. They ain't gonna melt like a Swiss chocolate bar left outdoors during a hot summer day." Now, fast forward to today, you have Eastern European citizens who have inherited a healthy dose of skepticism. When the pandemic hit and governments started throwing around rules left and right, some folks raised an eyebrow or two. Lockdowns, social distancing, they thought? Hold on a sec. Is this really about the virus or something else? See, in these parts, there's this ingrained sense of independence. It's like telling an Eastern European to stay put is akin to asking a squirrel to stop hoarding nuts. It just ain't in their nature. They're used to rolling up their sleeves and figuring stuff out on their own. It's an admirable quality to have. So when the government comes along and tries to play big boss, a lot of folks start thinking, hey, I've seen this movie before. Plus there's this whole historical memory thing going on. People still remember the day when the government had a finger in every pie. And it wasn't exactly cherry pie. Trust got broken, rebuilt, and broken again. So now when the government says jump, some Eastern Europeans might just look the other way and keep sipping their coffee. And let's not forget the power of community. Eastern European societies are tight-knit, like that sweater your grandma knitted. It's hard to unravel. People often rely on their friends and neighbors more than they do on the suits up top. So when someone from the government tells them what to do, they might think, who are you to tell me? My Aunt Jessica knows better. Now, don't get me wrong, Eastern Europeans are not all rebels without a cause. They care about their health and safety just as much as anybody does. But they've got a unique cocktail of history, skepticism, and self-reliance swirling around their DNA. So when you wonder why they didn't dive head first into the strict COVID lockdowns, just remember, it's a mix of I'll do it my way and I've heard this song before. Oh, you're venturing into the land of central bank digital currencies now. A very, very hot topic that we have discussed on multiple occasions on this very channel. Well, let me break it down for you in a way that's as clear as day. Eastern Europeans, they've got this healthy dose of skepticism brewed in right into their morning coffee. So when you start talking about these fancy central bank digital currencies controlled by the big shots, you might as well be serving them a plate of cold borscht. You see, these folks have a history of governments playing tricks, pulling strings, and making promises they didn't keep. You remember the days when they had to count their toilet paper squares and stand in line for hours just to get a loaf of bread? Right, that kind of stuff leaves a mark. So when somebody in the suit tells them, hey, we're gonna give you this newfangled digital money, they're likely to squint their eyes and say, hey, hold on, what's the catch? It's like inviting a vampire into their house and they're not gonna do it unless they are 100% sure that the garlic and crosses are working. Eastern Europeans, they value their privacy and freedom, and the idea of a central bank digital currency launched by the central bank just doesn't sound right to them. Well, that sounds about as appealing as a snowstorm in June. Plus, these folks have a knack for finding alternatives. You remember that time Uncle Vladimir fixed his old car with a rubber band and a shoelace? That's the spirit. They're used to finding their own solutions, working around the system, and keeping their hard-earned money away from prying eyes. Now, don't get me wrong, they are not living in the Stone Age either. They use smartphones and the internet like everyone else does. But when it comes to money, they want something tangible that they can hold in their hands, stash under their mattress, or bury in a jar in the backyard. So when you start preaching about central bank digital currencies and how convenient they'll be, just know that Eastern Europeans might raise an eyebrow or two and ask, what for? And convenient for whom? They're not gonna dive into this digital currency pool without checking the voter temperature first. They'll want answers, assurances, and also a little bit of garlic just in case. If you want to thrive throughout the 21st century and avoid government nonsense, click on the link below the video and sign up to our mailing list now. Thank you for watching.